She was just trying to sit down on a crowded subway, groceries in hand, exhaustion in her eyes, when a stranger shoved her and called her names in front of everyone. No one stepped in. No one said a word. But in the corner of that silent train car, a quiet man slowly stood up. And everything changed. What the bully didn't know. She was married to Chuck Norris. It was just another early morning in New York City. The subway platform buzzed with the rhythm of a regular workday. Coffee in hand, headphones on, eyes glued to phones, and people doing everything possible to avoid eye contact. It was the kind of morning where everyone minded their own business. Nothing unusual. Nothing heroic. Until the shouting started. "Hey, lady. You gonna run me over with your groceries now? What are you even looking at? You look like an idiot." She was just trying to sit down. A woman in her mid-40s, worn coat draped over one arm, and plastic grocery bags in the other. Her eyes were tired but quiet, like someone used to being overlooked. She didn't respond. She didn't argue. She just tried to sit. That's when the man shoved her shoulder. Hard. Her bag spilled. Oranges rolled across the floor, bouncing toward the subway door. One burst open on impact. Still, no one moved. The entire car froze. Everyone heard it. Everyone saw it. Yet no one stood up. Until one man did. He sat quietly in the far corner. A wide-brimmed hat cast a shadow over half his face. His jacket was weathered, his boots dusted with years. He didn't rush. He didn't yell. He simply stood and walked over. He knelt beside the fallen groceries. One by one, he picked up the oranges, careful not to bruise them more. "Sweetheart, did someone just hurt you?" She didn't speak. Just nodded, trying to hold back tears. Then he stood up. Not like someone looking for a fight, but like someone who had already been through 1,000 of them. "I'm her husband," he said. His voice didn't rise, but it carried through the car like thunder. "And you just picked the wrong woman." The man who had been yelling scoffed, grinned, and rolled his shoulders. But something in the subway shifted. Not the tracks. Not the speed. The air itself changed, like silence had grown teeth. The train rattled on, unaware it had become the stage for a moment that would soon be talked about across the city. The loud man smirked as the older figure stood tall beside the woman. "Who even are you, old man? Her dad? Her bodyguard?" The man didn't flinch. He just stared. Calm. Steady. Like a mountain that had seen every storm and still stood unmoved. Then, someone whispered from the corner of the subway. "No way. That's Chuck Norris." Heads turned. Eyes widened. A few people instinctively pulled out their phones, but even they paused, afraid to break the moment. The aggressor blinked. "What? You think I care who he is?" Chuck didn't move closer. He didn't need to. "Back when people like you thought shouting made you strong," Chuck said, his voice even and quiet, "I was learning that real strength doesn't make a sound." The bully laughed nervously, but it rang hollow. Chuck took a single step forward, just enough for the steel of his boots to echo on the subway floor. "That woman you shoved?" he said, his voice never rising. "That's my wife." Every person in the train went still. The man started to retreat, but Chuck didn't chase. He didn't threaten. He just stood there, rooted like justice wearing a cowboy hat. "Do what you want," the man muttered, trying to play tough. But his tone had changed. His bravado had vanished. From the end of the car, a woman finally whispered, "You messed with Chuck Norris's wife." On a subway. In public. The silence that followed was heavier than any punch. At the next stop, 2 transit officers stepped in. Someone had already alerted them. They looked at Chuck, then at the man who had started the whole mess. Without resistance, the bully was escorted off the train. No cheers. No applause. Just the knowledge that someone had drawn a line, and made everyone remember what true presence looks like. As the subway doors slid shut behind the escorted man, the car fell into a silence that wasn't just quiet, it was reverent. The kind of stillness that clung to the air like dust in sunlight. Chuck Norris didn't sit down. He didn't say another word. He simply turned to his wife, gently reached for her scattered grocery bags, and began putting them back together, one item at a time. A loaf of bread. A bruised apple. A can of soup that had rolled under a seat. She watched him, her eyes still wide with the remnants of fear, now melting into gratitude. "You didn't have to," she whispered. Chuck gave a half smile. "I always do." Across the train, something strange began to happen. One by one, people started moving, not toward the couple, but within themselves. A young man slid his phone back into his pocket, eyes downcast. A woman offered a napkin to wipe off the apple. An older gentleman nodded to Chuck with quiet respect. They didn't cheer. They didn't speak. Because what they had witnessed wasn't a show. It was a reminder. A reminder that real strength is not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't puff its chest or swing its fists unless absolutely necessary. It simply shows up when no one else will. Chuck and his wife sat down side by side. The grocery bag rested on her lap now, steadied by his hand. At the next stop, a mother and her teenage son stepped onto the train. The boy looked around, then spotted Chuck. His eyes lit up. "Is that?" His mom whispered, "Don't point." But Chuck turned slightly and offered the boy a small nod. No autographs. No stories. Just a moment passed between generations. An unspoken code. Be strong. Be kind. Be there. By the time they reached their final destination, the train had regained its usual rhythm. But something was different. Not in the noise but in the silence. Chuck helped his wife up, took the bags again, and tipped his head to those who dared to meet his gaze. As they stepped off, a man near the door muttered under his breath, "We all saw what strength really looks like today." And no one disagreed. As the train continued its journey, Chuck and his wife remained seated, side by side, the hum of the subway tracks fading into the background of a city that had just witnessed something rare. Silent courage in action. But what they didn't know was that someone had been recording. Not for clicks, not for clout. Just instinct. From behind a tote bag, a teenage girl had quietly filmed the incident, her hands shaking slightly as she captured the confrontation, the fall of the oranges, the quiet authority in Chuck's voice, and the shift in the entire train car's energy. She uploaded it that afternoon with a simple caption. "He didn't yell. He didn't fight. He just stood up, and everything changed." By midnight, the video had already hit 1 million views. People were captivated. Not by violence. Not by drama. But by the striking contrast between cruelty and calm, by a man who didn't need to raise his voice to command a room. Comments flooded in. "This is what real strength looks like. Who is this guy? He reminds me of Chuck Norris. More men like this, please." Within 24 hours, major platforms picked it up. News anchors replayed the footage, emphasizing the calm resolve over retaliation. Podcasts, blogs, and YouTube creators dissected every second, highlighting how rare it is to witness strength rooted in dignity. Meanwhile, Chuck stayed oblivious. He didn't have social media. He still paid cash for his coffee and read the newspaper at the corner store. It was his wife who told him. "They're calling you the subway cowboy," she said, half laughing, half in tears. "They think you're some kind of legend." Chuck chuckled. "All I did was pick up some fruit and look a punk in the eye." But deep down, she knew it was more than that. He had reminded her, that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's quiet. Sometimes it just stands up when no one else will. Later that week, as they walked through the city, strangers began to nod at Chuck. Some whispered, "Thank you." One man stopped and said, "You made me rethink what kind of father I want to be." Chuck simply nodded back. He didn't want fame. He didn't want attention. He just wanted a world where men didn't have to yell to be heard, and women didn't have to fear being ignored. And maybe, just maybe, that train ride made that world a little more possible. What happened on that subway wasn't just a confrontation. It was a wake-up call. A reminder that true strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it stands quietly, defends with dignity, and leaves a mark that can't be erased. In a world where people often look away, one man's calm resolve reminded us all of what it means to protect, to love, and to act when it matters most. Chuck Norris didn't raise his voice. He didn't throw a punch. But he changed the entire mood of a train car. And maybe, just maybe, the way a few people will act the next time they see someone being treated unfairly. If this story moved you like it moved us, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more powerful stories that celebrate courage, kindness, and quiet strength. Because sometimes, The loudest message comes from the quietest person in the room.